Hi, my name is Valenciata, New York City-based director and creator of theater, television, and film, and also proud Phoenix Global Artist Ambassador. Today, I am thrilled to be speaking with the acclaimed multi-instrumentalist and composer, Travis Sullivan. For more on Travis, you can read more about him right below this video, but in the meantime, here is a sneak peek at the amazing talent of the one and only Travis. Well, hello, Travis. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well, thanks.
Oh, Travis, I'm doing so well as well because the audience just got just a sneak peek of your incredible talent with your song Going Home. I want to know, Travis, first and foremost, what was the impetus behind creating that song?
I have been doing a lot of home recording during the pandemic, and so I'm pretty much composing every day at my home studio, and that was something that originally just started as a piano piece or a piece for piano trio, and then I morphed it into something for quartet. But it was really, I hadn't been home. Well, I'm from New Hampshire originally. I've been in New York City for 25 years now. So I thought the sort of introspective vibe of the song, it's a very simple song for the most part, but it's also, I thought the title was appropriate, kind of going home, going back home. I've been back home to New Hampshire since then, since I wrote it, but that was it. And also I'm really inspired by artists like Keith Jarrett and things like that, artists like that. So in particular, that song was really evocative of me, of like the Keith Jarrett European quartet from like the early 70s, mid 70s.
Absolutely. Well, this is what I love so much about art, Travis, and why I asked that question. Because for you, obviously, as the creator, you had it one North Star in why you wrote it. But when I listen to it, I think of Going Home as something that when I speak with all of many artists, but also many humans and friends about what this time has been for them, they've all found a place to reacquaint themselves with their inner child and to go back to basics. So it's so interesting going home, meaning that for you, but for me as a listener, for me, I got very nostalgic about thinking about the time that I've had to look within and to go back to my inner child to check in on him.
Yeah, well, mission accomplished then.
Well, but that's what I love about you, Travis, because you're like a true, excuse my French, effing artist, born and bred New Yorker. Although I love New England. What I love about you, Travis, is that you're unapologetic in everything that you do, whether it's as a solo multi-instrumentalist composer, whether it's with your trio, your quartet. I want to lean into how you created and what the idea, the impetus of the idea behind your orchestra.
Yes, well, this is going back now over 20 years. I went to Manhattan School of Music, and I had met a friend of mine. She was a Scandinavian jazz vocalist, and she brought us on a tour. We were with a big band to Sweden, and that was kind of my first experience being in Scandinavia and everything. But I had the idea of, I was getting into Bjork at the time, you know, it was like the late 90s, and Bjork's career, you know, she was really breaking out, you know, as an, you know, as a real visionary artist and everything. And I was into her music, and I had the idea of writing a big band chart with her music. And this was like 98, and the song Hyper Ballad was the one that really kind of inspired me. And I sat down and I wrote a little uh, intro to the song, but using there's a melodic line at the end that's played by the strings, and I orchestrated it for trombone. And I sat there, and it was like 8 bars of music, and then I was like, this is a dumb idea, and I put it away for like 3 years. And so I came back to it a few years later, and I said, I'm going to finish this. And so I did. And at the time, it seemed like there were a lot of artists in the jazz community that were really interested in what Bjork was doing. She had come out with the album Vespertine at that point, and she had worked with Vince Mendoza, the arranger, jazz arranger, and her songs were just really very conducive to me, to improvisation and things like that. So I finished the Hyper Ballad chart, and then I wrote another one. And then I was like, I'm going to write a song cycle, or I'm going to conceive of this as like a song cycle for big band and vocals. And it went from there. I through a friend of mine, I got somebody that was managing the band, and it was operating as a booking agent for it. And we did our first gig in 2004 at the Knitting Factory. R.I.P.
I know,
It
but
was like a
wow.
packed house. You know, it was there were like a couple hundred people there, and it was
Did
really
Bjork
my.
ever find, did you ever get in touch with Bjork at all?
I have never spoken to her directly about it. She has never talked about it in the, you know, like no one's ever asked her about it if she's aware of it. But in, I think it was 2008, 2009, I went to Reykjavik to play with do these arrangements with the Reykjavik Big Band for the Reykjavik Jazz Festival. And I ended up, the bass player in the band ended up having played with Bjork like years before, when she was doing her jazz project, the Gling Glow album. And so he had some stories, and he was like, you know, I can introduce you to the drummer for the Sugar Cubes, because he and Bjork have a record label together called Bad Taste Records. And so I went to the Bad Taste office, and I met him. I forget his name now, but you know, he had me put the CD, at that point it had a CD out, and I wrote a little note to Bjork. He said he was going to pass it along. I guess that she did. I mean, she's never told us that we can't do it. So
Well, I guess like no news
yeah.
is good news, Travis. But
Yes. Yeah.
but what I also love so much about you is that you just seem to keep going forward. And
Mm.
I'm I'm so curious what the household of Travis Sullivan was like on a musical landscape in New
Hmm.
Hampshire. What was playing? What were you inspired by? When did you realize, oh my God, I see myself with the saxophone. I see myself writing. I mean, what was that landscape like growing up musically?
Well, my family, I'm an only child, and my parents, although they, especially my dad, you know, had a real appreciation for music, particularly uh, 1950s pop, I would say pop and rock and everything. My dad was really into, you know, antique cars, classic cars, and stuff like that. So, you know, it was like a whole 1950s thing kind of growing up. uh, and so I was listening to music you know, music was around me all the time, but it was really more my parents encouraging me to to take music lessons, and, you know, paying for, you know, I was just in band at school. It was kind of like a normal sort of relationship with music at that point. I'd say by high school, I was starting to get into jazz and everything through various serendipitous events and everything, being, and there's a community there. 'Cause I grew up maybe 20 minutes away from the University of New Hampshire. That's where I went to school, and there was, at least at the time, there was a real interest in jazz education, jazz music, and everything like that. And so in high school, I started listening to a lot of like 1960s free jazz and things like that. I didn't know what it was all about, but for some reason I really connected with the spirit of that sort of music and improvisation. I think that that's really kind of centrally what I've always been kind of focused on, is the improvisation element of the music.
That's amazing, Travis. And I love that you're putting forward. It's like almost like you looked back to look forward. You know what I mean? All this great music, especially the big band era and jazz, which I'm such a huge fan of. And as a singer, when I was singing, it was all that Americana. But the fact
Mm,
that you were able to, in your own way, filter through Travis Sullivan, this fusion of jazz and Americana and big band with these different types of musical landscapes. And I'm just, my
mm.
final question for you is, in looking ahead, what you're most excited about in terms of music that you got to work on over these last 18 months, ideas that you have that you can't wait to
Mm.
just get up and out.
Sure. Well, over the past, like, I'd say 3 or 4 years, as I mentioned before, I'm really getting into the home recording, and also I've been working towards uh, becoming more of a composer for like soundtracks, video games, and things like that. I'm a gamer, so I've really been trying to merge those two elements together and still be doing the live performance stuff. I mean, the stuff I'm doing with like quartet and everything
We'll talk about going back
is
home
good.
to your inner child. I mean, going from,
Yeah, right.
now scoring video games. I mean, oh my God, how cool is freaking that?
Yeah, I really like that whole community and scene and everything. It's an opportunity to engage with a younger audience as well, and also just utilize some more current technology and everything. I've been doing a lot of stuff with orchestral samples, and that's kind of what keeps me going back every day to turning on the computer or sitting at the piano and you know banging some music out.
I love it, Travis. Well, listen, I want to let our
Sure.
audience know, for more on the incredible Renaissance man that is Travis Sullivan, you can read more about him right below this video. Travis, thank you so much for your time today, and I'm happy that we're connected now.
Yeah, totally. Thanks so much, Will. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.